I wonder now, since he has 34 charges, will they have to announce? Will they have to respond on each of the 34?
I believe so. Yes.
So that's going to be a long, on count 1, on count 2.
All right, everyone. Here we are on hour 3 of the verdict.
Yeah. All right. Exactly. And somewhere,
but they're all tied. But they're all tied together. So, I would think. I mean, if they're doing their job, absent Merchan's crazy instructions, which I'm sure we're going to be talking about.
We're talking about that. Yeah.
Oh, I mean, the most insane thing I've ever seen. I would think it would be an all or nothing sort of thing if they're doing their job.
Yeah, let's actually just talk about that. I've got it up here.
Yeah. I've got to boost my audio really quickly.
Okay. I can probably do it on my end. Let me see if you're low.
Oh no, I'll do it on my end.
Okay.
I've got it way down because these are a little bit loud. There we go.
Okay. Let's talk about, because Judge Merchan, let's actually just go right into that. Judge Merchan essentially tells the jurors in the 11th hour as they're leaving the room, hey, it doesn't matter if you all don't agree on what he's guilty of, as long as you all agree he's guilty of something. And
the biggest mistake that could possibly be made.
Well, a lot of people, again, I'm not a lawyer. Maybe we could get, if there's a lawyer watching, I know Ron Coleman watches the show. Well, I actually don't know if you could comment on this because he's representing.
I've already looked into it. The problem with this, number one, it appears to potentially go against a Supreme Court decision. But I'm not exactly sure about that. That part I'm not sure.
People were trying to poo-poo that by saying that's for federal court. This is state court.
But then there's no legal precedence created by a court decision.
Yeah,
it happens all the time. The other problem is that Merchan has ensured an appeal if there's a guilty verdict, as though it wasn't already assured before. But he'd get, the decision would get ripped to shreds. I'm still saying I believe that it will be probably a hung jury. The fact that they didn't get their verdict in the first few hours shows that there is discussion going on. I think there will be a hung jury, and I'm not sure exactly what the composition of that hanging will be. The problem is that Merchan effectively instructed the jury that there doesn't actually need to be a crime for a crime to have a guilty verdict for the crime, because the whole point is these felony charges are based on the premise that there's an original crime. Well, if the jury can't decide what the original crime is, how can you find him guilty? It makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. It's part of that shit.
Yeah, and part of it also, from what I understand, is what makes this a federal charge. What allowed it to be tried this many years in the future was the combination of and the succession of the multiple crimes. So Trump
pointed that out earlier. He said, why didn't they bring these charges like 6 years ago or something like that? No, they waited till election season. And that's what I think is the point. They don't really, they would like a guilty verdict because they want to punish him.
They want that front page.
Exactly.
Guilty.
Trump guilty. Yeah. Trump is a felon. And then they can go after him. But they're not confident of that. What they can do, though, is try to issue instructions and all that other bullshit. Get him guilty on at least one of these charges, and then they can punt. Basically, like the legacy media articles write themselves. So it's like with CNN or MSNBC. They'll say Trump found guilty. They'll ignore the fact that he's appealing. They'll ignore the fact that the law wasn't even followed in the course in the proceedings in the case. A pall hangs over his presidential reelection bid.
Yeah.
Quite clearly, people are upset about the fact that Donald Trump is a felon or something like that, something to that effect.
The wild thing was, I forget who we had on. It might have been Ron Coleman. I forget who we had on, but what I said when I covered it today, it was quite simply like, this court ruling means nothing. People's opinions are so cemented right now that I feel like this election season will have the fewest undecideds in history, and like modern history.
Yeah, and you're probably right. Yeah,
and you'll have essentially 0% of people. How many people who are voting for Trump are going to change that because he's convicted? Zero.
It's like that song by The Fix, "Stand or Fall." That's basically the long and short of it.
Yeah, yeah. It's not going to bring a Biden voter over. It's not going to scare a Trump voter away. So it's pointless from like the electoral perspective, unless something absolutely crazy happens and they gave him like, the maximum prison sentence. But that's not going to
Well,
happen.
that brings about its own chaos, because then how do you actually do that when he's got Secret Service 24/7?
Well, that was even the judge said, like, I'm not really considering jail because of the insanity that would have to be around it. And
Eric Adams thought it was a good idea. Did you hear his statement a week ago when he's like, "Well, Rikers is open and fully capable of taking care of Trump." Yeah, that'll go over really well.
yeah, put him on Rikers Island, see how that goes.
Yeah.
So I mean, the if he's found guilty, his numbers go up. If he's found innocent, his numbers go up. If it's a hung
Agreed.
jury, his numbers go up. There isn't a scenario where this helps Biden at all, which is like
Yeah.
the most hilarious part of it all.
And there's also not a scenario in which people like us that have to cover this shit don't benefit.
Yeah,
Because
it's all good for us.
it's gonna be chaos either way. He's found guilty. MAGA fans demonstrate. Then there's the appeals process. There's chaos as they try to figure out how they can even punish him at all. Really, if he's found not guilty, the liberals will riot. They'll burn down Wendy's, and then there'll probably be another George Floyd moment or something, I suppose. If it's a hung jury, then Alvin Bragg is sweating bullets. He has to figure out whether to even retry or not. And, and again, the liberals will be really, really pissed off because they'll be like, well, I know that there was one person on that jury that really loves Trump, and they planted him there to try to save him so they could swing the election for the Russians or something like that.
Yeah, that's a pretty good impression, a pretty good crystal ball. I think, ironically, that'll be hilarious hearing the left, talk about how this is rigged. Like, everybody in the free world is like, this is the craziest, most insane miscarriage of justice in a very long time. Well, I mean, since Carl Rittenhouse getting charged, quite frankly,
or or with the Sandman civil case,
or Nicholas Sandman,
with the defamation there.
Yeah,
but this is way bigger because you'll have like yellow journalism stink pieces about random individuals anyway. This is the very first time, and the jurors and everyone else needs to understand this. This is the first time in U.S. history that you've got a former president who's been brought up on any charge in a court of law. And Alvin Bragg was the one that pulled the trigger. All these other cases, they came later with the Mar-a-Lago documents, with Fulton County and so forth. They all post-dated. As far as the criminal proceedings, this is the literal first one in about 250 years of American history. I'm really hoping they find him not guilty, although if they find him guilty, it'll be hilarious seeing the fallout. And if there's a hung jury, that'll be hilarious too. So again, we can't really lose on this one.
Yeah, I think when the jury came back initially and now asked 4 questions, 3 of which were around Dickley's, whatever that guy's name is, testimony, Dickless or whatever, and then one around the other guy, Cohen.
Well, I mean, one of the people that is literally, his surname is Pecker.
Oh yeah, that's Pecker.
And seeing a picture of him next to Stormy Daniels, who was a whore,
I know, it's great.
Is slightly humorous.
Well, Pecker was a prosecution witness, and so the jury came back today, like around 3:00 their time, I think. Trump had to go back in to the courtroom, and they had 3 questions around Pecker's testimony and 1 question around Cohen's testimony. And people immediately reacted negatively to that. I think you can't.
How dare they have questions?
You can't react anyway. I mean, look, Rittenhouse had guilty or not guilty on all charges, and the jury had asked several questions.
Yeah.
The jury coming around.
People shouldn't read too much into that. This is fairly standard procedure, especially for a major case. What I'm looking at is the length of time it takes them to deliberate. If we end up stretching into the wee hours of tomorrow, we get closer and closer to being able to declare it's probably going to be a hung jury, at least on some of the charges. But they're all linked, so I don't see why you would find him guilty on one and not guilty on the other. So
because that's what they do. Because to get to, I imagine some amount of deal making gets done behind the scenes, and they're like,
Oh yeah.
he's got 34 counts. I want to get out of here. My kid's got a soccer game. People don't think this happens. Trust me, it happens in jury
Yes, it
rooms.
does.
Yeah, like my kid's got a soccer
People
game.
people do not realize how inefficient and retarded the legal system actually is.
Right.
Most of the time, even if someone is completely innocent and can prove it in a court of law, they can't fund the 5 to 10 grand or whatever it is to wage the legal case. So the prosecutor will say, well, plead guilty to a lesser charge.
Right.
Okay, that's it.
Yeah.
That sounds fine. You know, I spend, you know, a weekend in jail. I pay $1,000 fine. Okay, basically you're paying a bribe. This happens literally all the time.
Yeah, you want to go bankrupt and have a coin flip, or lose a little money, little bit. This is the deal making that goes on in our justice system.
And the opposite is even more damning, which is that somebody will do something truly reprehensible. You've got them dead to rights, but you still give them a plea deal.
Right.
Like,
that happens all the time.
I know you raped several people, but lewd and lascivious conduct, it's your first offense. You know, plead guilty to that. You'll have a civil case maybe later. And you'll be out on the streets raping people again.
Well, you might have 26.5 grams of cocaine, including packaging, and then the judge will come around and give you a plea deal too. The plea deals happen all the time. They're about saving money.
Most of the time.
Most of the time. That's very true.
Literally more than 50% of the time. And people don't understand this about the legal system. More than half of the time, it's a plea deal.
Yep. Yeah.
In one way or the other.
Very few people can afford to fight it. The state doesn't have the resources for everything to go to a jury trial. That would be nearly impossible.
So the worst get off, and people that did nothing wrong get punished.
The rich get off. The poor are the ones.
It's literally the opposite of the system we should have.
Yeah, the people that can't afford a defense, they're the ones that get the worst end of the legal system.
Liberals used to complain about that. I noticed that they're not complaining about it as much these days.
Yeah, coincidentally, it's become a different issue for them. Yeah, I think them asking questions, I don't think that means anything. The jury instructions from Judge Merchan essentially amounted to like, you know, hey, any chance you guys can come back with a guilty verdict, I'll accept it.
Which shows desperation,
very desperate. And from what I understand, according to some law analysts who spoke on it, the slippery slope or the tricky part of that is that if he's not guilty on all of it, then it's actually not even a federal crime, which means they shouldn't be trying it in federal court, which makes the whole case funky.
The whole case has been null and void from the get-go. But the thing is, something can be illegal without being illegal, and people need to put on their lawyer caps here because it won't. Otherwise, it won't make sense. The courts can pretty much do whatever they want to. The prosecutors can pretty much do whatever they want to. It doesn't have to be legal. They're still allowed to do it. It's just that on appeal, you can prove that they did something wrong, but you have to have the resources and the time to actually prove that. Otherwise, you're automatically wrong, even though you're right.